Welcome, everyone. Good morning to the East Coast and good afternoon to Europe. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Nicola and I'm based in Paris, France. And I'm the partnership developer at SDE USA. Just a little check before we start. Can everybody hear me? As you are on mute, please let me know in the chat panel on your right. So, yes, perfect. So today we are presenting an open panel discussion on the topic of managing software development in unusual times. I'm happy to present to you our speakers from North Carolina in the US. We are joined by Gary Sharon, the Senior Director of Research and Development at SAS, Nelson Andrews, President and the COO at Measurement Incorporated, SDE CEO Donny Goins, and Evgen Meyer, CEO at KTC Data, who is joining us from Prague in the Czech Republic. I will let each speaker briefly present themselves. So Gary, Nelson, Evgen, and Donny, please give us a brief statement about yourself.
All right, certainly, thank you. So I'm Gary Sharon, Senior Director of Research and Development at SAS, in charge of our Customer Intelligence Division. I have been leading that team at SAS for about 14 years now and have quite a bit of experience at several other companies.
I'm Nelson Andrews. Good morning and afternoon, I guess, everybody. I'm Nelson Andrews, the president of Measurement Incorporated. I started my career nearly 30 years ago in the assessment industry and worked at other organizations like Informix and IBM. And about 16, 18 years ago, I took a job at MI as a software development manager and have since transitioned into senior vice president of IT and now into the presidency of Measurement Incorporated. Thanks. I'm glad to be here today.
Donny?
Evgen, go ahead, Evgen.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Evgen Meyer. As Nicola said, I'm joining you from Prague, from Czech Republic. For who doesn't know where it is, it's in the center of Europe. And in fact, I'm CEO of a company called KCT Data. We are 100% oriented to SAP services and SAP implementations, etc. We are one of the most traditional partners in our region, and last year we delivered our services to about 180 companies. We are over 20 years on the market.
Cool. I'm Donny Goins. I've spent about 30 years in the software development space, working from small startups to leading large organizations of software development and big corporations. I'm currently CEO of Software Development Europe. We started this company back in 1995. We have 3 labs in Czech Republic and Europe. We have about 115 software developers. I spend most of my time obviously working with the company, but I also spend time lecturing at universities on entrepreneurship, also mentor teams or startups in the area here, and enjoy playing golf, running, cycling, and spending time with the family.
Thank you. So just a little reminder before we get started, this is an open panel discussion and you are very welcome to ask any of your questions to the panelists. Please type them into the question panel. I'll bring them up during the presentation. Also, during the webinar, I will be putting polls in the poll panel, so feel free to participate. So now, without further ado, I would like to ask the first question, which I think is relevant for today's situation in software development. So, how did the pandemic situation affect your company and your projects?
All right, I can start us off with answering that question. So at SAS, we had already prepared, for such an event from an IT perspective. But as soon as it started to look like we might be working from home, we ran a trial. We had about 2,500 people go home for a day to identify issues, to help the IT department work through those. That went really well. And of course, about a week later, we were all sent home to work. So it's been extremely smooth transition. The IT department did an amazing job supporting, thousands of workers around the world working from home. So from that perspective, it's been a smooth transition. We also got lots of requests from companies, governments, universities, wanting us to help them analyze data, help them, with tracing, help them with forecasting and predictions about where's it going next, how bad is it going to be, those kind of things. So we within a week or two, formed up a whole program office to manage those requests and to get resources assigned to help with those projects. So it's been quite busy for us, actually.
Nelson?
Yeah, I'll forward Johnny by telling the same story again, but we're in sort of a unique position in our industry, in the testing industry, because testing all happens generally in the spring. And so we had made all the preparations for the state assessments in the U.S., starting in August and working up through February, basically getting everything online, ready to go. So a lot of test preparation, obviously getting systems configured. And about, then towards the end of February, start of March, the word started coming out that schools were closing, and then eventually schools canceled testing. And as I was saying earlier, for us, it's kind of like being a farmer. We had planted a crop, and then it didn't come in. And they aren't, so far, it does not look like anybody is going to pick up testing in the fall. So the tests will not resume until spring of 2021. So basically, we had our entire year's worth of work and revenue, most of it anyway, in that short window just collapsed. And so we quickly adjusted and started, trying to figure out where we could refocus our efforts. And we've had some good luck with some research grants and areas like that. Other work we could do for our clients, and the form of data analysis. Normally we wouldn't have this kind of time on our hands in March, April, May, June. And so we've been trying to take advantage of that, do some internal upgrades as well. But we also pivoted into the area of contact tracing, so that our staff is generally used for scoring state assessments and looking at student responses and giving them numerical values. So we're basically training them instead to perform contact tracing. And so we've had to make some pivots and be quick to respond, but we're hanging in there at this point.
Action?
I was surprised how smooth the transition to 100% home office was. It was rather smooth process, as Gary said. From day to day, we disappeared from our premises and everything worked perfectly. In fact, we've been lucky even with customers, and maybe I can say it helped to our projects because it gave us quiet for them. When those big factories here are running its production, so it's difficult to negotiate with them. Now they stop the production and they've got more time for us. It was not a bad thing. Sorry for saying that. Our back office did a great job with repatriating some people who were forgotten abroad. That was an issue, and that was a challenge, because we make about 15% of our revenue in Great Britain, and Great Britain is a country which was pretty attacked with coronavirus. And for example, we've got a guy then with his family, and we haven't been able to return him home until now. That's what was pretty difficult, and they are awaiting baby, and finally they had to decide they will bring baby to the world in the Great Britain. So those were the everyday issues, but regarding the business, it brought us nothing bad until now.
For us, basically, most all of our customers are international, and we work remotely anyway, so it wasn't so dramatic for us. Fortunately, most all of our customers use either Slack, use Slack or use Microsoft Teams. So all that really worked very smoothly for us. The biggest impact for us is that our company, we're kind of built on a culture, a family culture. So all those people and engineers come into work, they work together, they do stuff outside the office. So our impact was we didn't have that camaraderie continuing at the office. In other words, people being back at their homes. But other than that, it's not been too bad. We've obviously lost some customers. Probably about 20% of our business got hit. It comes in waves. You see a little wave, and then you see another wave, and I think we're through most of that impact right now. And for us, I think working from home has actually been pretty smooth.
Okay, great. So I will have another question, which is kind of connected with this one. How do you think will the COVID-19 virus impact software development in the future?
Yeah, I think it's forever a viable option for software companies for people to work remotely. And I talk with a lot of practitioners, and I think everybody is thinking if and when they ever go back to the office, they want to continue to work from home 1 or 2 days a week. So people have gotten very comfortable with it. finding advantages to it, kind of the lack of distractions, depending on how many small children you have in your house. So I think it's been good, and I think it'll forever be, part of what we do as software practitioners. As Donnie mentioned, the tools like Teams, Microsoft Teams, and Slack, and other collaboration tools make it almost seamless to work remotely. So it's been very good, and I think we'll change how we do our business.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the obvious things, the collaboration tools and stuff. We obviously saw a giant spike as well in Slack usage and other collaboration tools, but I'm expecting that there'll be way less face-to-face interaction for some time. We used to I'd walk by conference rooms in the mornings, and every one of them would be filled with stand-ups, and I'm not expecting to see that for some period of time. I'm guessing that that's going to be mostly virtual for the foreseeable future. So far, we've had about 3 months of this. Same for us as the others. There was a day where all of a sudden we just shut down and everybody worked from home, and I really haven't seen any kind of drop off. We work with software development partners here locally. We work with SDE, our own internal software developer or engineers. I collaborate with them still, day to day, mostly through Slack, and I haven't seen anything in the act of software development change. Everybody's still writing code. The process still works. We're staying on track with timelines. We're meeting deadlines. So, like some of the other folks, we had rolled out a remote work policy at least a year ago that just to try to help our employees just work from home when they needed to, things like that. So we were really, really prepared for this. We had Office 365, so there were no problems with email or anything like that when we just switched over. And the one thing we did do, I think, around February when we saw some of this coming is we made sure we had enough VPN connections just to make sure that everybody was working remotely. We had enough licenses, and so we were prepared when the day happened. I haven't seen anything really change. It's our partners I just talked to some of our software partners the other day, and they're fully engaged. Their staff hasn't had any issues as well. They've kept all their deadlines for us, and so I haven't seen any big drop-offs.
What I can say, I feel we all came closer to our children here as they are communicating always together with the social networks and all those fingers on their mobile phones. And I would say, from my point of view, I really hate it. I found really very ineffective those Teams meetings and everything, because something what you can solve in 2 minutes in person, you are having about 30 minutes meeting on Teams. No one is respecting the traditional business hours and everything. Everyone is calling you in the evening. Finally, at the beginning, I've been really excited. It will be nice vacation, nice additional vacation, those home office. And I've been looking forward to come back to the office because it has been more disturbing, and I work more than when I'm going to the office, where I simply lock my door, going home, and I'm in quiet. Yeah, so maybe those things will change and probably are changing. We always used remote tools and everything in SAP environment. It's standard, but I'm trying to prevent myself from doing that. And I put a big attention into moving all our people back to our premises when was possible, because I'm really a man of personal contact and I hate that artificial communication. Sorry for saying that. I know.
So I'm going to answer the question a little bit differently. I'm going to look at it from a broader perspective. I think if you look like software demand and software projects, I think if you look at the next, I'd say 1 to 2 years, I think you're going to see a lot of companies still suffering. Profits are going to be very much stressed. You're going to see projects reduced, projects cut. So I think from a software demand perspective, I think we're going to see a little bit of a dip. But I think what happens is when you have a crisis, all of a sudden the entrepreneurs come out in droves. And I think you're going to see a lot of new products and a lot of new demand for products coming out. And I think as you go through the next 18 months and forward, I think you're going to see the demand for software developers to be what it was 6 months ago. And I don't think you're going to see universities being able to meet that demand, just like we were having problems 6 months ago doing that. So overall, I think the COVID-19 it's got a short-term impact on software developers, but in the long run, I think it's going to be a greater demand just because anytime you have a crisis, entrepreneurs come to the rescue, and that's going to create more demand for us. Back to you.
So just Doug, Evgen, Doug feels with you. And we have a first question from John. So what have been some of the biggest challenges or issues you faced while transitioning everyone to remote?
I'd tell you a couple of the issues we've encountered, sort of mentioned it before. Families with small children where both parents are trying to work has been extremely stressful and challenging for those employees. So that's been unique to this situation where not only are they working from home, but their children have to be at home with them. So that's been a challenge. We've had a few employees around the world who don't have the infrastructure to get good internet access. So that's been a challenge that we've had to deal with. And I'd say we have lots of collaboration tools and we use Teams and it's been great. And we've kind of adjusted our use of it. But one thing I've observed is when we were all in the office and someone's mentioned it before, and there's an issue, a good developer gets up out of his chair and walks down the hall and gets help. And in 2 or 3 minutes, it's been resolved. What I've observed is in this remote world, they reach out electronically. So they send the issue over to somebody and say, hey, can you take a look at this? And that comes across a lot less personal. So from a standpoint, that person is tending to be offended by the fact that they threw the issue at them as opposed to owning it themselves. And I know people didn't react that way when I walked down the hall and asked them. So I've seen that be an interaction challenge that I had not expected.
That's funny. I have a skewed perspective, I think, because unfortunately for my staff, I've been promoted, and so now when I ask things, they have to respond. But I have had a lot of interaction with folks. Wildly, I'm actually writing software on the side as part of this COVID or the contact tracing effort, and so I've had a few issues where I'm slacking with a software developer just in this same fashion. And I'm like, I don't know why this isn't working. And I can just click, hey, I'm calling you a screen share. We talk about it. And he's like, try this, blah, 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 and we fix it. And, I roll out. So I feel like for me, I was one of those developers when I was a developer that walked down the hall and using the tools. I don't know, maybe it's just our acceptance of it here, but I have felt like it has been pretty useful, at least in the Slack world. We click a button and you're talking to somebody, or you're typing a message to them, or you're sharing your screen with 2 or 3 people to talk about some of the work. So it seems pretty effective from where I'm sitting right now. But again, if I was a developer, another developer might just say, I don't want to deal with your problem and ignore me for 6 hours. They don't have that luxury right now. So one of the things I've seen though too is from my perspective, quantity of communication, not over but under. From where I sit now, there is a real thirst for media or a lot of updates. People I think there's a lot of tension, a lot of concern, and just in general because of the economy and the effects that the COVID's having on everybody. So I get a lot of requests for updates and more information. It's kind of continuous. So I find myself having to provide that either macro or micro, either company-wide or just in small pockets to people just to make sure they're aware. I've seen this real increase in this video conferencing. We jumped on just voice conference calls a lot, previously, and that was sufficient if we had to talk to clients or talk to partners. Everything I've seen in the last 2 months has been video conferencing. So if you get on a call anymore, everybody's video conferencing. There's no longer just a voice only conference. Let's see what else I have. A few notes here. Sorry. And in general, I think there's just an uneasiness and sort of increased tensions in our staff, and I think just dealing with that has kind of been a problem because I think being remote, they have a sense of not knowing what's going on in the headquarters and with everybody being remote, and so getting that information out effectively is has been kind of tough. But we try to, either through Slack or email or any other communication mechanisms, get information to people as fast and as often as we can. And so far, I think we're doing pretty well.
For us, it was interesting from my point of view. First of all, and it was good news, we haven't been facing no technical issues. Absolutely not. Everything works perfectly. On the other hand, what I found, how many of our people are living in the small apartments and how many screaming children and dogs they got during all that online calls and everything. Meaning we've got perfect technical infrastructure, but not the good background for working from home. And in some families, it should be pretty difficult. Because, for example, if I will take my family, and as I'm well situated, so all of our children have got their computers. We've got pretty strong internet line at home and everything. And if you look at that 2 children has got their lessons from day to day online, the school lessons. My wife has been working remotely, and I've been working remotely. So for normal family, which is keeping one computer with some poor computer line, it will be not the easiest thing. But for us, it was very okay. Another interesting thing was that we found how great employees we have. If you will ask how the teams were keeping their contact even in that online time, just imagine, because we've got a structure with line managers having their own budgets and using to have a breakfast, for example, every second week for the team, just to keep the team together in person in some restaurant. And now they organized from one week to another a common breakfast. They prepared breakfast for each of themselves, and they just sat to their computers and were breakfasting and chatting together about everything like in restaurant. It was their idea, and it was really great. So finally, if you will count even the thing that we succeeded in about 2 or 3 tenders in that time, having the new engagements for us. And we've been running even the hiring processes, so everything is possible, but I don't like it. That's what I will say.
Yeah, for us at SDE, I think the transition was pretty smooth. As I mentioned earlier, most of our customers are international customers that work remotely. Fortunately for us, most of all our customers have really good product owners who kind of define the requirements and stuff. So that process of interacting with the developers and developers interacting with other developers has all gone very smoothly. Probably the things that happened for us is sometimes when people transition to the home, they didn't have good setups in terms of like good office chairs. Like I'm a firm believer, everybody needs a good chair. If you got to have one thing, you want a good chair. So we've had some engineers who've had to actually kind of come to the office and take some stuff and equipment stuff back to their homes to make it more easy for them to actually do their work. But so far, our employees have been great. I mean, same thing as Connie Nelson saying, there's lots of communication, there's lots of stress because, say we've lost, a few customers during this process, and the engineers are kind of wanting to know, hey, what's going on? But we've been very fortunate and blessed that we've been able to sign up like 3 or 4 new customers over this period, which has been really a surprise to us. So overall, I think we've made it very well. And it's like Efton said, our employees are very good people, and they have that good culture, good work ethic. So the transition's gone pretty smooth for us.
Great. So another questions we have, do you find yourself trusting whether your engineers are working the required hours?
Yeah, I don't find that to be an issue. I guess to me in this modern day of software development, it's not so much about the hours anyway. It's about the productivity and the output. And we try to be as flexible, very flexible, and allowing people to schedule their time to get their work done. So that hasn't really changed. What I think I observe, and I think I heard it mentioned as well, is that people are actually working more hours because they're not losing 2 hours getting ready for work, commuting into work, going getting lunch in the middle of the day, getting back home. All that time that was lost time, some portion of it, if not all of it, is being put into the workday now. So from that perspective, if anything, I'd say it's been a positive change from people working hours perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I have mixed feelings, but I think for the most part, people are exactly what you said. That was my experience, was that you could roll out of bed and roll into your office in 5 minutes and be online and working way before you would normally be working, and then usually way after you would normally work. But I've worked with several people. Like I said, this opportunity to work with in software again has given me the opportunity to work with other developers and our developers, and I'm we're interacting throughout the day and sometimes solving problems into the evenings and weekends. And so I know they're online. I know they're available. I try not to take advantage of that. Usually they're reaching out to me as well. So I'm trying not to put a big burden on them. But I know it goes the other way. I think what Gary or somebody else said, I often hear, I've had just this week, 2 people have had to hang up on conference calls because there were things they had to do with their children in the middle of a work conference call. So I know that's getting in the way in places. We're trying to measure them, I guess, based on the work they're doing more so than the hours at this point. I feel comfortable that they're getting the work done. And I know there are people that are working 10, 12-hour days some days, and then maybe 4 some other days, and that's fine. At this point, we're not trying to make sure they're clocking in at 8 and clocking out at 5, and so we're pretty comfortable with it.
So my point of view is the same what Gary said. It doesn't matter for me when they are working. I'm suspicious they've been going for a walk with children and everything, and it really doesn't matter to me when the work has been done and customers were satisfied. And regarding overall performance, I would say that our people worked more than expected in amount from a view of amount of hours they delivered to our customers, and finally the performance increased. So it was not a problem. And what I think that this freedom given to them to choose the time when they are working and not to work from 8 to 6, for example, really increasing the productivity.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the very beginning, there was always kind of doubts in my mind. They always creep in because everybody's working from home. But I think one of the things that makes it positive for us is that we use the Agile Scrum process. So in that Agile Scrum process, the engineers actually, you take a big chunk of work and you break it down, and the engineers make commitments. And we're looking on those commitments. Our customers are looking on those commitments to be met. And those are being met, which I think is really good. I think I agree with Gary. All that travel time is going away, which is really nice, because I know over where we are in Czechia, a lot of people have to take trains and trams and buses to get there. So that just got reduced. I think the other thing is what was interesting is doing this especially the last 2 or 3 months has been, parks were closed, retail shops are closed. People didn't have anything else to do. So they were actually working. So I think in the end, we actually got more hours of productivity because there was nothing else for them to do. So it was kind of interesting.
So I have another question from Sam. How did you solve the lack of personal contact during your hiring process?
I will have to say that was very uncomfortable for me. We've hired a couple of people in my division since we've been home. First time in my career I've ever hired anybody without a face-to-face. I was not extremely comfortable with it, but hopefully it'll work out, and we'll prove that maybe it's not a requirement, and change the way we do recruiting and interviewing and hiring in the future.
And we haven't had to deal with that yet. Since as I opened up with all of our clients basically freezing their work for the summer at least, we have not been looking to expand our staff. Our staff has been pretty static. I don't think with unemployment rates, people aren't looking to jump ship or anything at this point, and so we have not had any open positions, and we haven't been expanding. What I don't know, I guess, is when things pick up, if it'll be more difficult because candidates will have different kinds of concerns, and then now they may be looking at our requirements for being in the office and what our office is like and the precautions we take and things like that. So I don't know if there will be a different angle to hiring that we'll have to adjust to in the future that we haven't had to deal with in the past.
I would say from my perspective that the hiring process was not the real issue. Exactly as Gary said, okay, it was not the most comfy thing, but you can easily replace the personal contact by the online tools. The real challenge was adaptation of junior people. If you hire a senior one, it's not so difficult to make from him a part of your team and processes and everything. But the way how we train the new people, that we make them part of the team, and the seniors are giving them small parts of their job, and finally, and it's increasing. So that's still an issue because we simply don't know how to train the people online by that way. It don't have to sit together. So that was an issue, and it is still persistent issue. Not the hiring process. Hiring process is simple. Yeah, but the adaptation process is still a crucial challenge for me.
Yeah, I agree with Efton there. You know, we've hired a couple of engineers over this time period, and that process of doing the interactions and doing Zooms or doing different meetings and over the phone and through the internet, it's not been the issue, but getting the people integrated into the team, because in our case, culture is very important for us, and that family atmosphere is very important for us. So we're not able to get people in, get them into that culture, and basically build that camaraderie with the teams that we like to see. So that's probably been the biggest challenge for us. So, fortunately, we are starting to see people come back to the office, and hopefully we'll start picking up that camaraderie. But the hiring process hasn't been a challenge.
So I have another one. Since going more remote, do you feel it's more beneficial for companies to embrace agile project methodologies to increase the outcome of success?
Yeah, I think the current situation and the transition that we had to make very quickly is naturally making companies more agile. We have to be more agile. We have to be more flexible. We have to be more willing to change and adapt. So I think definitely it will help companies transition. Companies that haven't already transitioned to agile, I think they will be more open to it. I think it will be less foreign to them because they've had to adapt already, and they're getting comfortable with adapting quickly and being more agile.
I agree. I think, from our industry perspective, our apple cart has been turned over, and so as you probably know, it happened. I don't know if worldwide, but it definitely happened in the United States, where schools shut down completely. Learning became remote learning, and immediately there were lots of issues that arose that people weren't prepared for. The tools they were trying to use, the participation of the students. So what we don't know, I guess, in our industry is what the outcome of that's going to be. We could face a whole different industry in 2021 than we have faced prior to 2021. So we are an agile company, but using that methodology will allow us hopefully to, again, make quick changes, either adapt existing tools, create new tools, but do it in a way that we can provide minimal viable product and get feedback and maybe adapt and get ourselves in front of clients. Because I don't think we know exactly what we're going to face going forward. It's literally a whole different industry than it was, but it has been for the last 20 years.
Okay, it's good to say at the beginning, I'm not the biggest fan of Agile, It's because in what area we are working, you have to understand that SAP is pretty conservative work. And in fact, those huge systems, Agile is perfect when you want to build something on greenfield from my point of view, but we are never building nothing on greenfield because we are still in some heterogeneous environment and we have to ensure our customers it will work. Of course, a lot of our customers were forcing us to Agile project methodologies and everything, but finally the results were not the best. It was more costly and took longer and everything. Really, all the promised benefits hasn't come. In SAP environment, I'm talking just about SAP ecosystem. I'm not talking about IT in general. Yeah. And finally, I would say with all that coronavirus crisis and everything we are talking about here, I feel something what I will call back to the roots. The customers returned to traditional methodologies because it was much easier to realize project by that way, and I'm very happy from that. Yeah, so I will answer that question no for our SAP customers.
So in our case, I think basically for in our customers, most of our customers are using Agile, some type of Agile Scrum or Kanban process. And I think it's in most everybody's using Microsoft Teams or using Slack, so that's going extremely well. I would say if you're an ad hoc company, doing ad hoc software or you're doing a waterfall method, you're probably going to have to figure out how to change and how to adapt, because I do believe that if you're building, and we do building stuff where FGen does more the consulting and stuff already built, we actually build a lot of new stuff from the greenfield perspective. Being able to take stuff, break it down, get developers to commit to it, doesn't make any difference whether in the office or not in the office in terms of meeting that commitment. So I think companies really have to look at, if you're building products, you really have to look at using an Agile Scrum or some type of methodology like that.
So what keeps you up at night regarding the current and the future status of software development?
I'd say for me, meeting the needs of our customers, like Donnie said earlier, companies are struggling. They are going to continue to struggle for some amount of time. Sorry, I got something on my glasses. And so as our customers struggle, we want to be there for them and help them through that. And so their challenges and their needs and requirements just increased. And so what we need to do for them just increased. And so, that's what keeps me up at night is being able to meet the needs of the customers.
I agree. As I said, we have a lot of change in our future uncertainty that we're not even aware of yet, as far as where or how this is going to play itself out in the world of education. And with that, everything has moved so quickly. I'm concerned about the security, software security specifically, but there's the pace that we're trying to go. There's no room for error in the industry that we're in, because you're dealing with PII of students and things like that. So making sure that we're not tripping up somewhere on something simple and divulging stuff we should not is concerning. Staffing is still a concern for me too. I know we have high unemployment rates. My concern there is that things could change quickly, and as I think Donnie said, there could just be a giant swing and need for software development to fill some of these gaps out there that maybe are being uncovered now. And if that were to happen, we might be racing to either keep our current staff or find additional staff to help out. So there's some concern that when this lifts in a few months, who knows, that there could be this giant uptick in hiring, and we're in a very competitive area, so that could really impact us.
It's a very strange question, to answer. If I have to answer in 2 words, I would say artificial intelligence, because I'm an ex-programmer and I know what the job means, and I think I feel we can be easily replaced in the future with artificial intelligence if everything goes as promised. Yeah? So thanks to everyone, I'm a manager now. What's more difficult for artificial intelligence, but I think it will be really a big thing for our industry when this thing will start to work. Fortunately, at the moment it works only in PowerPoint presentations, what I've seen. But when it will really start to work, it could change dramatically everything. And as I've got very good sleeping, so it's something have to wake me up in night, so it's artificial intelligence.
So it's 2 things, and I'm going to agree with FJ on this. First, I think the short term is I think we still have a lot of pressure on profits and revenue that's going to drastically affect us over the next 6 to basically 12, maybe 18 months. So I don't think we've seen the down part of the curve in terms of what is going to happen on the software side and the need for software developers. But I think that will transition back out, as I said before, in 18 months. And I absolutely agree with FJ. If there's one thing that you really have to think about if you're a software developer, it's AI. And it will happen. There will be a point of where machines will write code and write code better than what even we can write code. As a former code writer many years ago, I think it's probably 5 years, 10 years, 20 years out. And hopefully I'm going to be sitting on a golf course somewhere playing golf by the time that happens. But I do believe, I agree with Efton, it will happen. It's just a question, is it 5 years, 10 years, 20 years out?
So are you making any changes to your office setup to adapt to the social distancing measure?
We are not yet. Of course, we don't have a transition back. I'm sure there's a transition back plan. There's probably multiple transition back plans, but we don't have a date. Our offices support social distancing fairly well already, in that we don't have common workspaces. Each employee has their own office. So from that perspective, they can go to work, they can go in their office, they can close the door and be social distance. Then you ask the question, why not stay home and do the same thing? So I think where we will struggle, and I've seen some proposals which again sort of beg the question, why are you in the office? Proposals like, okay, no big meetings, no face-to-face meetings, all the things you would go back to the office for. If we don't have those, then what's the point? So I think it's going to be an interesting transition back to the office. And of course, we have, like on our headquarters campus, we have 6,500 people, all going to common spaces like cafes for lunch. And, and how do you handle that, right? How do you handle that many people in such a small space?
And we've already begun. We like SAS, we don't have a return to work date yet. We have begun preparations for the day that it may happen. And so we've got those nice little stand 6 foot away stickers on the floor to show people where to stand. And we've got conference rooms with, 3 or 4 chairs in them that used to have 12 and things like that. Signs up everywhere, things like that. But we don't have a date yet. I could foresee, even if when we do have a date, our current policy will, is that people will only come in if they're comfortable coming in. We're not going to require people to come back in until there's some sense, I think, nationwide at least, or at least statewide, that things are safe again. And so I would expect to see face masks in common areas if people do come back to the office. Either people will not be allowed to use conference rooms, or if so, again, there'll only be 3 or 4 seats in there. I could also see that we'll probably have either a schedule or just some kind of limited, return to work policy that says only this many people can be in the building at a time. We do have an unusual situation kind of too, where we have about 4 or 5 buildings that were spread across with a few hundred people. And so our buildings are highly populated anyway, but I can see that still being greatly reduced. So we have minimal people in the building at the same time. Again, we're at this point, we're not even projecting a date. We're waiting to see. I think that's going to be dependent probably on vaccines and the comfort levels we see in our state as numbers decline. And I think we're still going up, not down at this point. So I think we have a little road ahead of us.
We are back in the offices for the 2nd month, yeah. And I'm very proud of it because it's the first time I remember in my long life that Czech Republic is in front of US in some metrics. Yeah. So because usually we are just following you. What I would say is just several thoughts around it. It was interesting thing. First of all, you can never predict the reaction of the people. The guys I understood being the real man who will ignore the disease and everything, so they were so afraid and shaking because of that risk of being infected or something like that, always wearing their face masks and everything. And at the other end, there were people who you would bet they will be scared, and they really were absolutely normal without nothing. There was a law in Czech that the wearing face masks were obligatory. We all returned to our offices and people started to remove the face masks. What I can do? Am I expected to call police to my own people or to shout to them or something? And on the other hand, there were other people who wanted to wear their face masks, and they started to argue together. It was absolutely crazy. Yeah, so finally I raised in an internal rule that the face masks are not obligatory at our premises, but if in just one room is just one guy who wants the other to wear it, so they have to wear it because respecting him. That's how we managed. Yeah, and the simple answer: no, we haven't moved furniture because it's absolutely normal. We've got enough space to keep the social distancing. We moved to the new premises about 3 months before the crisis, so we are okay regarding that. But if you will start to return to office and there will be the face mask, the standard in your country, I don't know how it is in the US, so you will really see very interesting situation. That's what I can say.
So first of all, as I said a little earlier in our webinar, is that Czech Republic was very aggressive about wearing masks and everything. So I think we've already started returning to work. We are finding it a little bit challenging to get people to come back. So like we're doing things like having Pancake Wednesdays, trying to incentivize them to actually come back in. We are looking at, if they got common areas to wear a mask, we do prefer people to do that. Because until a vaccine comes out or people get immunity, we don't want to force anybody. So what we're trying to do is work with everybody. As we get into the next month, the next cycle of this, we are going to more strongly encourage our employees to come back into the office. But we also want to be respectful that if somebody has an issue, whether it be a health issue, and they don't feel comfortable, we got to work with them to make sure that they can work remotely. An example would be maybe an employee's pregnant, or maybe an employee's spouse is pregnant. In those kind of scenarios, we need to be flexible. So the whole thing is about being flexible, but yet also realizing that there is an advantage to having everybody back in the office, as many as possible, and all that camaraderie, like what Gary talked about, being able to walk down the hallway to get a solution to a problem. It's not very difficult when you can just go in the office and get on a whiteboard and start working, where when you, as Gary said, when you hand somebody something very electronic, I mean, how many times have you received an email and got kind of, quote, pissed off with somebody, and they didn't intend to piss you off? I mean, they were just basically sending an email asking a question. All of a sudden, you don't have that physical exchange. So I think it's important to get people back in the office, but also respect that there are going to be some cases where we have to let people work remotely.
So another one, would you consider home office as a permanent status for some or most of your employees?
I don't foresee that ever being the case for us. We own our own campus. We own a lot of our offices around the world. We have offices in Europe and castles and those kind of things. So there's a lot of. So basically, we have a beautiful campus where people enjoy coming, with lots of amenities: pharmacy, doctor's office, daycare, cafes, swimming pool, gyms. So one of the things that my employees are complaining about most from working from home is they can't go to the gym. They can't go to the cafe and get a wonderful meal for lunch. They got to go a lot further to see the doctor. They used to could walk out of their office and cross campus. So we will never. I'm pretty sure we will never embrace work from home as the main option. Companies that are leasing space and multi-tenant buildings, sure, I think it's a reasonable option for them. As Donnie said, you're going to lose that collaboration that happens naturally in the hallways. So, they'll have to make decisions about that.
I could see it. We don't have a SAS campus, so I could see people just desiring working from home from our campus. But we've always had some remote workers. We've got, even though our headquarters is in Durham, North Carolina, we have remote people on the coast in Wilmington. We have people in Denver, Colorado, that literally work out of their house full time. And that seems to be somewhat common in our industry. There would always be a certain number of people, I think, that will be in the office. We obviously have physical need. We scan documents and process paper. So we'll have some people that have to come in regardless. Our network operations group will have people on campus. But I could see a portion of our staff, getting really, really used to this. And if they could demonstrate that they can perform the same work from home continuously or, consistently, then I don't know that we'll demand they come back. That'll be a manager to manager decision based on the work that they're performing and whether it's affecting the teams or affecting the product and the deliverables. And if it's not, I wouldn't stand in the way of considering that.
From my point of view, I don't see that people want to have more office as a result of the quarantine and everything what happened. Yeah, the people who were interested in working from home, so they managed with us in past before the crisis has started, and now all others return to the office. It changed nothing from our point of view. I don't know, just even the one guy who loved to work from home. Yeah, I would say, with all respect to you, Nicola, we all like to run out from our wives to the offices. Or it's temporary. I know it's very incorrect, and I'm taking all the responsibility.
That's funny. After the, I think in our case, we consider the office a very valuable place for people to come, collaborate. Our whole thing is about building culture, and that culture is one where people not only come and work together, but they also socialize together outside the office. We have lots of team members that do activities together beyond just being in the office together. So for us, we want everybody to come back to the office. I mean, whether we mandate it, I don't think we could mandate it, but I think what we do is we strongly encourage it, and then we look at a case-by-case basis because, we believe being in the office is extremely important.
So we have about 10 minutes left, so we'll take one last question. Nevertheless, after the webinar, you will receive a follow-up email with information on accessing the recording and how to reach us with your unanswered questions. So, guys, will companies become more variable in the workforce with the outsource or offshore more work in order to become flexible?
I think that will certainly be true. I think having remote workforces have convinced companies that maybe thought it was a bad idea, they couldn't make it work technically or even collaboratively, now see it is possible to work with outsourced developers in another country because their whole company, their whole workforce is technically outsourced right now as they all work from their homes. So I do think you'll see a rise in companies using those options, wanting the flexibility, needing to do things quickly. So I think you'll see a rise there.
Yeah, I can see it going both ways. This was, when I was thinking about this, it was very regional. There were areas of the world that were more impacted, including the U.S., but Italy, things like that. So theoretically, I guess there could be some concerns that a particular region could be hit really hard with something like this and could tap out some resources that you were really counting on. So if people are kind of risk averse, they may see it that way. I see it the other way, which is, again, the flexibility. I think there's going to be a lot of things for us anyway, that are economic decisions. We're going to be looking at costs because for the foreseeable future, you want to be able to, as Gary just said, you want to be nimble. You want to be able to ramp up and do things if you need to. But if the economy shrinks again in 6 months, we want to make sure that we're able to adjust to that as well. So I could see it being a great option for people if they can supplement staff and utilize those resources to jump on an opportunity quickly or to pull back if they have to because of another downturn of some sort.
What I think, it depends if you look to it from customer's perspective, what you are expecting customers to do, or from the service delivery expected from the companies like us. But finally, it doesn't matter. I will talk about our customers. And in fact, everything happened here. All of them started a few years ago. We will outsource everything as far as better. Yeah, and finally they all returned back to the local companies and everything because of the quality of the service and because of everything, the flexibility and everything. They simply want to do what I'm usually saying as our competitive advantage that we are providing the SAP services with human face. You are not calling to some answer machine when you are calling our support, but you are calling someone with some name and you know him from past. That's exactly what the customers want to buy. So what I will say, it happened here, and on the other hand, we've got the perfect thing here, and it's our own language. If you are in the US and everyone talks in English, so it's much easier to offshore the services to India or elsewhere because everyone talks English. But with Czech language, which has been voted being the fourth more complicated language all over the world, it's simply impossible. So that's our thing which gives us the optimism for the future, that they will simply need us because the customers want to talk their native language and we know it. So I would say that all that experiments happened in last years, all of them returned back, and finally it gave a lot of business to us because we are providing, for example, 24/7 support services for most of the German companies. In the SAP T-shirts also, they are just hiring our people because the companies are feeling we give them the highest added value for the lower money than, for example, the offshore from India or something like that. So I won't expect any big changes in that. I think everything happened in that area. Yes.
So I think you're going to see basically companies want more flexibility in their resource staff. I think you're going to see companies maybe doing a little more hiring in terms of contractors, outsourcing work so they can be more flexible going up and down versus having employees. And I think everybody on this panel will agree, it takes a lot of energy and a lot of money to be able to go out and hire employees, train them, and get them up to speed. And then if you have to let them go, you've really wasted a lot of money there. Where I think if you're willing to do more contractors and more outsourcing, I think you can be a little more flexible and not have to worry about that. In our case, I think we're seeing customers actually already reach out to us talking about how they want a flexible resource plan. Because as they say, they don't know where their business is going in 12 months or 18 months or 24. And I know we've heard Nelson talk about what's going to be next year, right? Is everybody going to be online? Do you have to provide a ability that every single kid can do it online, and it's got to be secure to make sure that they don't cheat or something. So all those things are questions that we're trying to solve today, and I think companies are going to look at it to be more flexible. And then the other piece of the puzzle is that if you already don't have some type of outsourcing strategy, as you get into the next 2 to 4 or 5 years and this demand for software developers continue to go up, you're going to have to figure it out because the universities don't produce enough software developers to meet all the demand of what's going to be out there. It doesn't even do it today, even in our crisis.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you for participating in today's webinar. Thank you for all the attendees and all your questions. So Gary, Nelson, Evgen, and Donny, it was great to have you here, and we hope to see you again next time. Thank you very much. We have some. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
I'll see you at Golf, Johnny.